Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show and definitely another exciting guest. We're going into the world of transformation, beast mindset, and powerlifting. Wow, that's a lot in one breath to say. But today we're going to really talk with a young lady whose story is truly one of that beast mindset and resilience, and using this platform to launch maybe her own podcast and launch books and other things as well. We're going to talk about all that. Let's welcome all the way from Virginia Beach, the beautiful Landri Peden. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
Okay. I like the name Landri. We talked about that briefly, and the first thing I said was, only Landry that I'm aware of is the world famous Dallas Cowboy coach. But were you a Dallas Cowboy fan? Was your family a Dallas Cowboy fan? How did your name start?
So none of the above. Basically, my mom and dad, they wanted a unique girl's name. And I happened to be born in 1985 when he was still around. And they loved what Tom Landry did. How he was openly religious on the field. He just was a nice guy. And so they changed the Y to an I, and here I am.
Landry, beautiful name. They picked a great mentor to put your name behind. I love Tom Landry. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, true hard Cowboy fan. But let's go back a little bit. Let's start this journey. Tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. You just said something that your name came from Tom Landry because your parents knew that he was a very spiritual individual. So tell me a little bit about who you are before we get into your story.
Okay. So I was born and raised in Michigan, just north of Grand Rapids. I'm the oldest of 4 girls and grew up in a farmhouse out in the country in Fremont, Michigan. And we had 1 bathroom. So I learned how to get ready really, really fast. So I'm very efficient. I came out of the womb wanting to win when it came to athletics. I channeled a lot of my childhood struggles because there was a lot of hard times as I was growing up that I really turned to sports to be able to overcome a lot of that, like the depression and the pressure and things like that. I started gymnastics when I was 4 and then got into like basketball, swimming and diving, track, like softball, everything. And, I ended up, having a point in time where, my mom and my stepdad divorced when I was 16. And I found out because I'm the oldest of the 4 and I don't look like any of my sisters, and like none of my sisters are athletic. So like friends were asking questions. Their parents were kind of asking questions. I was asking questions because I felt like I was getting treated a bit differently than what my sisters were. And then I found out that my stepdad wasn't my real dad because I was under the impression that he was. And I asked my mom when I was 16, when they were divorcing, if he's not my real dad, I don't want to go with him. I don't want to have to do a visitation because I was 16, so I could choose. And she eventually told me that I had a different father, but she wouldn't give me the information to be able to contact him. So years go by. I ended up joining the military when I was 18 and shipped when I was 19 because I didn't really have a home. I was kind of couch surfing. I lived with my grandparents for a bit. My grandfather passed away. So then I was just kind of finding a couch where I could because my mom didn't have space for me at that time. And she was getting into a bunch of stuff that can be another story, another time. But I joined the military when I was 19, shipped off, and I was in the military almost 10 years. I did part active duty and then finished up in the reserves. I am a mom. I have an almost 18-year-old son, which is a very difficult situation right now, but I miss him dearly. But I've fought through a lot. I was almost murdered when I was in the military by my ex-husband, and I went through a period of time once I got out of the military where I felt really, really lost. I wasn't training. I was like like I was isolating, and I looked like a hoarder because I was only ordering things. I couldn't leave my house. I didn't feel safe leaving my house. And a fellow veteran eventually got me into the gym, and got me into CrossFit initially. And I started being told that I was too strong for CrossFit. And I ended up going to the Arnold 1 year and fell in love with the sport of powerlifting, got connected with a local team. And now I'm one of the strongest women in the world, trying to help other people overcome adversity. And, helping people helps heal me. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
It always starts at the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's back up a little bit here. A farm lifestyle in Michigan. I'm trying to envision all this, but the key part is that you was living in this house with these other beautiful ladies that were you thought was your biological. Well, they are your biological, but they're step from another guy. When did the questions and when the things was your mom why was she hesitant to not tell you who your real father was or information about your real father? That's probably where I would start this conversation, because that seems to be the moment that Pandora box opened up when you looked at them and people are asking you questions, and then you go to your mom and say, hey, what the hell's going on here?
So I didn't realize what was going on as a child, but as I've gotten older, I realized kind of the personality traits that my mom possesses. We've had a very troubled relationship from the beginning. When I started realizing she would gaslight me, she would not take responsibility for certain things, and she kind of pitted me against my sisters, my family, my stepdad, people in the community. And now that I'm an adult, I can look back and I realize, like, she's a type of narcissist. She does not like to take responsibility for her actions. She will do everything she can to deny them. I even went through a situation where, she was dating a drug dealer in the area, and it was affecting my home life because my sisters had nobody to take care of them. And so my senior year, I quit sports, which is, like I said, I started sports when I was 4 and I didn't stop. Like, I literally played sports year round since I was a kid. And I was working so I could make sure my sisters were taken care of.
I was just going to ask you that. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to ask you that. Like, what was your financial situation there? Because to do all these activities still costs money. So you mentioned that, and let's clarify this. Neither one of us are doctors, so I'm not going to label her as a narcissist. But you said as you got older, you realized she started displaying some of the textbook symptoms. So let's go back to two parts of this question. Bringing a drug dealer in the house is kind of crazy, but give me some examples of some of the things that was gaslighting, because let's take it for what it is. At the age that this stuff was happening to you, you didn't have no idea what gaslighting was. So what were some of the things that she was doing that impacted you, because you eventually wind up going to the military to escape this crap?
Yeah. So she would put me in situations where she would have me do certain things. Like, when I was younger, she would have me hide the mail and from my stepdad. And I didn't think anything of it. She was like, well, just go get the mail and just put it in my dresser drawer. And so I would do that. And then my stepdad found out that she was hiding bills because she was maxing out credit cards. Like, she was taking us to, like, JCPenney, spending all this money. And this is where that pitting my stepdad against me kind of would happen. Is my stepdad found out. She then placed the blame on me, saying that I was actively doing this. And then when my stepdad would confront me in front of her, she would then side with him and be like, yeah, she's been putting this in my dresser. I didn't ask her to do that. And she would tell me, she's like, you chose to do this. And, it was constant things like that. Like, I felt crazy, and it was very, very frustrating. She would make me feel guilty for certain things. Like the dynamic between her and my stepdad, like she would talk to me in private about some of the things that were adult issues that I probably shouldn't have been exposed to.
Right.
And it then when it would come forward between her and my stepdad, I would get spiraled into the middle of it again. And it would then be, it was my issue, not her issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so my stepdad and I always had like a very, very troubled relationship since it was like around age 13 is kind of when I really started noticing these things that were happening. And
was your stepdad not aware of the actions that his wife was exhibiting? I mean, it seemed like to me, with all the blame being focused on you, and I'm in the house, I would be kind of like really analyzing this a little bit deeper, going and even pulling you to the side and say, "Look, what's really going on here?"
Yeah, I honestly, that's the part that I'm not sure of. I don't know, because that's when I really started wondering if he was my real dad, because he always treated me differently. Like at first I thought it was just because I was the oldest, but then it was just like there was always animosity. There was always like this pressure of like I needed to be absolutely perfect, and even then it wasn't good enough. And I don't know if it was because of the dynamic between my mom and him, if he was just too far sucked into it that he didn't see like reality, or if he was struggling because I wasn't his child, because I know that can happen, but I don't know, because like we haven't spoke since 2013. I just finally gave up because I would try to get close to him, try to make amends, and then it was just like a constant roller coaster of emotions. Like we'd be good for like say 6 months, and then it would collapse. And then I found myself.
And didn't mean to cut you off. Did he know your biological father?
No.
So your mom never told him who your biological father was as well?
I think, as far as I know that I was adopted by my stepdad, like before I was old enough to know, because I was already conceived when my mom started dating my stepdad. So I was born into that family thinking that he was my dad.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how was that as your sister started to get older? How was y'all relationships?
It was troubled. Because again, I would get blamed for a lot of things, and I was so different than my other sisters, and we were all pretty close in age except for myself and the baby. The youngest is 10 years younger than me. Right. And I missed most of her life because I had already left for the military when she was young. But my sister that's closest in age to me, were like 2.5, 3 years apart. Her and I always had a really difficult time because we're very different personalities. And then when I was in high school, I was a senior when she was a freshman, and that caused a lot of animosity because like I was known as like the super jock and like outgoing and very strong and popular, and my sister was very quiet and she was a cheerleader and like total opposite. And people would never kind of refer to her as like her name. It was always Landri's little sister, or people would make comments of like, why aren't you like Landri? Like, why aren't you athletic? Like things like that. So I found out later on in life that she was always very bothered by the fact that she was living in my shadow. But then there was also disconnect as far as like the dynamic between my mom and I and my stepdad, because my mom would lie about what the situations were. And she made me out to look like I was this loose cannon of a kid, that, I was the one that was abusing her. Like she admitted me into a psychiatric hospital, lying to the doctors, saying that I tried to kill myself, which wasn't the case. That was the day that I went to stand up to her about being gone with that drug dealer all the time, because I was tired of taking care of my sisters. Like I graduated when I was 17. I was still a baby, So yeah, it's it caused a lot of ripples in the relationship with my sisters, and I'm trying to build that.
Right.
My baby sister is exactly like my mom, so I don't speak to her, but my other two sisters, I'm really trying to work on a better relationship now.
So you're trying, still to this day, you're trying to at least be the bigger adult here with both your stepdad and your mom. Now, and at this particular point in your life, you still are unaware of who your father is, your biological father.
No, so I got to meet him when I was 28 years old. I actually found him on Facebook because when I became pregnant with my son, I was 22 years old, and I knew my mom's side of the family history as far as health is concerned, but I didn't know my father's side, and I was concerned as far as like what could potentially happen with the baby. And my mom wouldn't tell me, but then her best friend ended up telling me one night what my father's name was, and I was able to find him on Facebook, and I sent him a message. And years later, he finally got it. And I don't know if he finally got it or he finally got the courage to reach out.
How long was it from the time that you reached out to his response?
6 years.
Wait a minute. You sent him a thing on Facebook.
Yeah.
And it took him 6 years to contact you?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was very emotional. Because I'd always felt like there was like something missing, you know, because I don't look like anybody in my family. I don't act like anybody in my family. And when I saw his profile on Facebook, like I knew instantly that that was my father, because it was like we had the same eyes, we had the same build. He was very athletic. But the problem is that, so he never had any other children. I was his only one. And when he was younger, he got hurt on a job site. He was a contractor, and he was your typical got addicted to pain meds and became an addict. So he was in and out of rehab most of his adult life. So when I met him, he was struggling, and I found out that we had lived literally like 20 minutes from each other my entire life, pretty much.
Why didn't he come forward before the pain pills, before the accident? I mean, he had to see you throughout his life, and your mom and her new husband. I mean, why not? I mean, what were some of the questions that you asked him?
I asked him, you know, if he wanted a daughter, you know, because I grew up in a rough situation and felt like I never belonged, and I didn't really feel like I had that like fatherly acceptance. And he said that he always wanted me. He was ashamed of his addiction, so he didn't want to hurt me in that manner, because he couldn't get it under control. And he ended up, eventually he passed away 4 years ago. He had a heart attack while he was driving, and didn't make it. And the good thing is that he was actually sober. They did an autopsy, they did testing, and he had no drugs in his system.
Wow.
So he was at least clean at that time. So he was trying.
You would think, based on your self-diagnosis of your mom and your stepdad, I'm pretty sure at some point you told him that you connected with your biological. I'm pretty sure shit hit the fan, because for them to keep a secret like that, something transpired. So did they ever come clean with what happened?
So my mom gave her version of the story, which was that my dad didn't want me. But I later connected with my grandma, my biological grandmother, my dad's mom. And like my mom actually took my dad to court to have him like removed from my life. Like he's not even on my birth certificate, nothing. So it was like he didn't exist. And my mom and my stepdad were very, very angry that I found him. My sisters were also angry because they didn't understand, and I don't expect them to, because they had a different dynamic with my mom and dad than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I found my real dad, they were like, I don't understand why you needed to do this. He wasn't in your life, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, that was a piece of me that's missing. And
Right.
I needed that, regardless of whether it was good or bad. I needed to know who he was.
Right. Wow. Let's go a little bit down the rabbit hole. I like rabbit holes. You wind up at a young age, 17. You can't stand the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You wind up enlisting in the military.
Mm-hmm.
How was that for you? Because that's where you met your husband, correct?
Yeah.
And this guy tried to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that sounds like a mystery movie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's when I talk about it, I'm just like, people probably think this is just like made up because it's so crazy, but it really shows the cracks in the system.
So what happened? You go to the military. How did you guys meet? And how did the murder plot come about?
So I met him after his first deployment to Afghanistan. He had been over there for 15 months. This was the early 2000s. And it was when like Cornwall Valley was like really hot. There was a lot of people not making it home. And when he came back, it's like we started dating. Everything, was great. And, in the military, we have a tendency to move a little fast into relationships. So within a year, we were engaged and getting ready to get married. And we found out we were pregnant. It was actually my bachelorette, like the night before my bachelorette party, I found out that I was pregnant. So I was like, well, I guess it's going to be sober. And so I told like my bridal party and everybody that, I was pregnant because they were like, why aren't you drinking? I was like, well, we might be having a baby. So my son, we got married in March of 2008 and my son was born in November of 2008. And from there, my now ex-husband, I think he panicked that a baby was coming. So he re-enlisted he volunteered to deploy again. So when my son was just 2 months old, my husband left and went back overseas. And while he was over there, started noticing like erratic behavior. Like one phone call might be my normal husband being supportive. And then the next phone call would be like, I'm going to take our child from you. You're a bad mom. I'm going to leave you when I get home. Like it was very up and down. And I knew something was wrong. At that point, I was still in the military as well. And it's like we deal with mental health a lot. And I knew who he was before that. And I'm like, this isn't my normal spouse. And so when he got back from that deployment, we started going to couples counseling at Fort Drum. And we were doing individual and together. And it was just not, we weren't making any progress there. So he suggested, well, why don't I re-enlist? And I was like, okay, well, re-enlist for somewhere that's not going to be a rapid deployment base, because Fort Drum was a rapid deployment base. Like you're basically going every other 12 months. Right. Mm-hmm. So, he's like, well, my best friend's at Fort Stewart, Georgia. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. And,
why was that not a good idea?
That's also a rapid deploying base. Okay. The terms of the reenlistment required him to waive his dwell time, which means that he's not required to stay home the 12 months to decompress, that they could send him at any time. So he went ahead and did that anyway. And we ended up moving to Fort Stewart, Georgia, April of 2010. And because he waived his dwell time, he was home for about 4 months from his last deployment, and they sent him to Iraq. He was then relieved within a couple of months of him being there. I'll never forget, I was sitting in my friend's house. Her husband was a medic in my ex-husband's unit. They had several kids, so I was over there helping with dinner and just kind of the kids and all of that. And I got a call. Mind you, I just spoke to my husband the day before from Iraq. And I got a call that said, hey, I'm at Warrior Transition Unit, which is a facility on post that they take soldiers that are either severely injured or messed up to rehabilitate. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm on post. Can you come get me? And I was like, are you okay? Like, do you have all your limbs? Like, did you get shot? Like, what's going on? Because usually they don't evacuate or medevac a soldier out unless something catastrophic happens. And he's like, I'll explain later. So he didn't explain. But he came home with me and the violence started happening. He started hanging like knives over my head and saying like, what would happen if I dropped this on you? We had a roommate at the time that witnessed him out of nowhere. I was literally just standing in the living room. He picked me up by my throat and threw me into the couch. And the roommate was like, I can't be around this. And he moved out. So then I had nobody. And I went to his command multiple times. I went to behavioral health, which I will say Fort Stewart, they were really on top of it. They did want to help him. So we got back into counseling, individual and couples. And Fort Stewart's behavioral health had said, you know, this man needs help. We need to take him offline and we need to rehabilitate him. So the plan was they were going to take him offline. They were going to put him in Warrior Transition Unit, like 6 months
was
roughly.
He maybe
to
suffering from
rehabilitate.
post-traumatic
I could
stress
go and
disorder?
visit him, but he'd be there. And all that needed to happen was his commander needed to sign off to release him from duty to do so. And his commander refused to do that. He said he needed rear D NCOs. So,
do you think he was suffering? Was he showing any? You said he was home for 4 months at one time. Was he showing any kind of weird behavior patterns like that would be resembles post-traumatic stress disorder?
100%. Yeah, he would get up in the middle of the night. He would be checking doors. He would be checking windows. He was hyper vigilant. He was like, I couldn't wake him up unless I was like, if I like grabbed his foot and would have to like step away because he would immediately like jump to action. There was a lot of signs just in the erratic emotions. Like he would go from like kind of this euphoric feeling to like just this most depressive state I've ever seen him in, but then explosive anger out of nowhere. He is diagnosed with TBI because he was blown up by an IED while he was overseas on his first deployment. So he does have TBI on top of the PTSD.
What is TBI to the viewers that don't know?
Traumatic brain injury. So because of the explosion, it rattled his brain and it caused damage.
Had you had the baby yet?
Yes.
When all this was going?
Yes.
What was his reaction when the baby came? Because to me, if you're suffering from all of these symptoms, I don't think you need to be. I'm not a doctor, but I'd be kind of nervous about having somebody around that is demonstrating these type of behavior patterns around my child.
Yes. So it was very nerve-wracking because he was on edge. He actually, like when my son was very young, he was gone for the first year of my son's life. Then the second year, he was gone a lot. Like he would go over to one of the guys that he was on rear D with, or a rear detachment, which is, it's either soldiers that are like getting ready to get kicked out or people that are getting ready to go overseas. They're just kind of in like a holding pattern.
What do you mean to say get kicked out for bad behavior or discharge?
Usually, yeah.
Why would he want to hang around people who's going to get kicked out for bad behavior?
Right. That's where the plot thickens, right? So he ended up meeting these people on rear detachments that he was spending all his time with. And I was at home with my child, raising him alone. And then, you know, after a couple of months, he went over to Iraq and then came back. and then was on that rear detachment. And that's when the violence got really bad. And I ended up filing for legal separation and asked him to leave the home. So I was still living in our house with my son, and he was staying at a friend's house. And he started.
Were you still active in the military at this time?
What's that?
Were you still active in the military at this time?
I was in the reserves at this time.
So who did you have to report his behavior to? You said it got real bad that, you had result to this part. So where is your protection? He's in the military, so it's not like he's a civilian. I think when those things happen, you have to go to your commanders and stuff. Mm-hmm. What did you have to do? Because he's demonstrating these behaviors.
So the first step was I went to his command and I expressed my concern about the violence. And then I went to behavioral health and got us into counseling. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was trying to do. Even though we were in that legal separation status, I was still trying to help him. And when his commander didn't sign off, that was just months before everything exploded. So the first instance, mind you, I don't know at this point what was transpiring behind closed doors. I just knew he was becoming very scary. So in May of 2011, he entered my home. He grabbed me, he pulled me to the back bedroom and held me at gunpoint in front of my child when he was 3 years old. I begged for my life and he ended up letting me go. He said, as long as I left my son there, that he would let me live. And so I knew that he wouldn't hurt my son. He had never laid a hand on my son. So I immediately went to the police. The police showed up. They looked and they saw that the shotgun had been disassembled and put away. So they didn't see any signs of aggression. And the police officer that reported it was a retired first sergeant. So he looked at me like I was just some crazy spouse. And they allowed my then husband to leave with the weapon and go stay at a friend's house overnight. So this was a Friday. And I immediately went to the courts to try to file a restraining order. Not that that's going to do much, but obviously I had to wait till Monday because no judges were in session on Friday at that time. Mm-hmm. So I had the weekend to hope that he didn't come back and hurt me. So I ended up calling the police, telling them that I was changing the locks on my home, which they told me that was illegal. But I said, my life depends on this. So I'm going to do it and I'll take my chances. So they sent 2 officers out. They were standing there in my living room. My ex was texting me from somewhere saying, I know the police are there. I'm going to effing kill you when they leave. Just you wait. I see that you're changing the locks, like all these things. And so the police told me, they're like, take your son, go somewhere that he doesn't know and just stay there for a few days until this de-escalates and you can get to court and get the paperwork done. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. So then I do that. I come back a few days later. He had broke off keys in every single lock of the house. So I couldn't get in except for, luckily I've always been athletic. We had a 6-foot privacy fence. I was able to jump over that in the back door. He wasn't able to because he was out of shape. And I was able to get into my home. So that was the first instance, which of course I reported that. The command did nothing.
I'm going to cut you off for a second and ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
You said command didn't do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When you mentioned the police,
mm-hmm.
I'm trying to keep the viewers on point here. He's in the military. He's active military.
Yep.
Who comes to your house? Is it state police, city police, or is it MPs?
It was city police because we lived off post.
I got you.
Yep. So it was local city police in Hinesville, Georgia is where we were living.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So they let it go. The command didn't do anything. So then by this time, things are really escalating. And I ended up taking my son and I went up to Michigan to visit my family for a bit. My birthday's in July. So I went up there I was trying to be up there for like close to the rest of the summer at that point, just to get away from Georgia, get away from him, all of that. And I remember sitting down to eat dinner and I got a call from my friend. She was watching my house and she's like, you need to get back here now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you just got served divorce paperwork. And I'm like, wait, what? And in the state of Georgia, or at least that area, I don't know if it's still that way, you have 48 hours to respond, or whatever is in that paperwork is going to go into effect. So he was trying to take full custody. He was trying to take everything from me and leave me with nothing. So I throw my son in the car and we hightail it back to Georgia. And of course, I respond to the divorce paperwork. And that's when the divorce starts, the whole process. So at this time, he's still threatening violence. He's living somewhere else. In the state of Georgia, even though I had a protection order at this time, I was required to let him see my son. So he was getting every other weekend. And eventually, come December,
You had a restraining order, but I guess to clear this up to the viewers,
mm-hmm.
Those are all different court cases in the law. Mm-hmm. Divorce and child custody and child services is a whole different judicial thing. So to the viewers, am I correct on that? That's why you was still forced to let him see your thing, because it's several different issues that you're dealing with.
Yes, their justification for the visitation, according to the attorneys, was that he did not show any kind of physical or emotional violence towards my son. Mm-hmm. So therefore, he wasn't a threat to my son. Right. He was just a threat to me. So that's kind of how they justified that.
Okay.
So we're going along, and then December 2011 rolls around, and it was the last visitation drop off. I didn't know that at the time, but dropped my son off, and my ex ended up coming to. Actually, let me rewind. No. So he had come to where I worked in Savannah the weekend prior, right? So he tried to kill me that night. I was bartending at a bar to make extra money in Savannah, and he had never come to Savannah the whole time, like not once. And he started messaging me. He was incredibly erratic, like not making sense. Like you could tell he was on drugs, which later I found out he was on heroin, cocaine, all sorts of other things. And he ended up showing up at my bar, and I had the bouncers escort him out. And he ended up trying to lure me to a parking garage, which obviously I didn't do. But I went to my car, and he had found my car, and he got in my car. And I was friends with a bouncer at the time that was right across the street. And so that guy came, got in my car, and was trying to talk sense into my husband. So my husband was like, well, just take me back to Fort Stewart and we'll be fine. So the guy's like, all right, we'll do that. So I start driving down I-95, and all of a sudden I feel something on the back of my head, and he starts grabbing for the door like he's going to shoot me and then throw me out into the street. So the guy in the front seat, my friend, ends up having me pull over, and he literally grabbed my ex and threw him out the door. And that was the last time that I saw him, as far as like just person to person interaction, until I had to drop my son off the next weekend. Mm-hmm. So
how did he throw him out the door? He was in the front seat, and your
he got out.
He was in the back.
He got out and threw him out. Because I pulled off to the side.
Yeah. I got you. Okay.
Yep. And so then the next weekend I had to drop my son off, and that was a Friday night. Saturday morning, 7 a.m., I get a call from a social worker. You need to come get your son. Your husband's been arrested. And I'm like, for what? And she's like, I don't know, but it's not good. You need to lay low. And so I showed up to, there's a Love's on the corner before you get onto post at Fort Stewart. And I met her there because her husband was one of the NCOs in my husband's unit. Mm-hmm. And she had my son dressed in her kids' clothes, which were too big, and my diaper bag was still at the old house. So I ended up getting my son, and she's like, you guys aren't safe. She's like, I suggest you just go back to your house and just stay quiet. And I was like, well, what happened? And I'm like, was he drunk driving? Like, what happened? You know, because it's like, I was like, this idiot, you know, he's doing something stupid with my child, whatever. And so I go to my old house because I still had a key, I walk in and there's weapons, ammunition, tripods, military grade equipment in my home that my son could easily reach. He's 3 at the time. So it's on the floor. It's in every bedroom. There was debris out in the backyard. Like the house was thrashed. And I mean, this was a brand new home when we bought it. And it looked like a weapons cache. And it looked like it had been abandoned for months. And so I called the police and I'm trying to start digging at this point because it's a Saturday. And I'm like, why did he get arrested? So I'm trying to look at the blotter. I'm trying to call his command, but nobody's there. Nobody's answering. And so I'm getting no answers. And the police just thanked me for reporting that. And that's as far as that went. So then Monday morning, I start calling his command. And I'm like, what is going on? Why was my husband arrested? And they kept calling me ma'am, which was making me mad because I was an NCO at the time in the military. I'm like, I'm not a ma'am. I'm also an NCO just like you. And I know that if 4 soldiers from my unit were arrested, that I would know something. And I'm like, my son was in his custody when he was arrested and you're not telling me what's going on. And this is not okay. And he wouldn't tell me. And so I kept digging. I knew that he was being held at Liberty County Jail. So I called Liberty County Jail and they were like, he's being held from another county, but we can't give you information on that. So then later on that afternoon, I found out on the news that 4 soldiers from Fort Stewart had been arrested for double homicide.
Double homicide.
Yeah.
Who got murdered?
There was a 19-year-old male soldier, Timothy York, and a 17-year-old girl, his girlfriend, Tiffany. They executed both of them and they left them. So there was originally 4 people. It was my ex-husband and then 3 other men. They later on arrest more. But this kid was involved in their group. So they were an anti-militia group. They called themselves FEAR. Forever Enduring, Always Ready is what their name meant. Mm-hmm. And they had plans. Basically, the leader, Isaac Igwigwe, back in July, he had a wife that was also an NCO in the military that was pregnant with his child. He ended up
NCO for the viewers.
Non-commissioned officer. Okay. So yeah. So his wife ended up dead, and he made it look like it was an accident, like she had some sort of health condition. And so he got a big insurance payout because she had SGLI, which is the military's life insurance policy. Okay. And I also, being in the military, had like a $500,000 life insurance policy on my head.
Wow.
And so they were going to kill me and make it look like an accident. And so what happened was this kid knew, because he was part of this group, because what they were going to do is use our insurance money to fund poisoning the apple supply, poisoning the water supply. They were going to they had a list of government officials leading all the way up to Obama that they were going to assassinate. And they were going to use our money to fund that. And
this was done all up under the watchful eye of the military.
Yeah, and they knew. They were watching them stockpile weapons for quite some time, because things would go missing from like their units. Things would go missing when they went and did ranges. So they knew. And I also was coming forward giving information about the violence and the oddities that were happening, and nobody stepped in. And so then this young man was one of those that he was a delinquent. He was getting kicked out of the military. And being 19, he was naive, thinking, I'm just going to tell these guys that I'm done. It's been great. I'm going to go home to Washington. And so they were like, sure, no problem. Let's have a going away party. Last hurrah. Because there was a place in Little Whiskey, Georgia, which is where they find the bodies later on. But there was a place in the woods out there that they used to go and do drugs. They would shoot guns because they were doing target practice if they had to assassinate someone with a gun. And so they lured Tiffany and Michael out to the woods. And from confessions, they took Tiffany out of the car first, put her on her knees and shot her in the back of the head. And then Michael got out of the car because he was driving, and he went to run, and they shot him in the back of the head. And they left the bodies by the side of this lake, and they thought that the gators would get them. And what they failed to notice is that on the other side of the lake was like a hunting fishing lodge. Mm-hmm. And so there was fishermen the next morning that came by and they found the bodies, but then there was no motive. So that, because the murders, I believe, were on a Monday evening, and one of the guys that was involved ended up, his dad was a big time attorney in Atlanta at the time. And, I can't remember his first name, but Burnett. He ended up going forward to the police on Friday and confessed, because he was trying to get a plea deal, because he knew that they were going to be caught, because the bodies, it came up on the news, the bodies have been found, but they were looking for leads and all this stuff. So he came forward and ratted all of them out. So then that Saturday morning, they did a mass brigade, or squadron. He was a Calf Scout. They did a mass squadron formation, and they arrested those 4.
How did you know that, let's call it what it is, a bounty was put on your head?
After the fact. So that's, so once my ex was arrested, the media got involved, right? Mm-hmm. And there was, he was amazing. There's a reporter from the Bloomberg newsroom that had reached out, because a lot of different reporters had reached out, and I was trying to get away from them. I moved overnight because where I was living, reporters were just lining up at the gate trying to get to me. I was getting emails all the time, and there was something about this one that was genuine, right? So he emailed me, and he told me that I was in danger, because he had sat in on the confessions. And that's when I found out that they were trying to kill me for my insurance money to use it towards their plot. But then I also was told that there was death threats against my son and I, that they were going to blow my son's head off on the sidewalk in front of me and have me watch that. And then they were going to murder me if I said anything, because they knew that I had seen the weapons. They knew that I had seen what was inside that house. Because later on in the investigation, they found out that the clothing and the different things that they used for, the walkie-talkies and things like that for the murder, they burned in the grill at my old house. So
how come they didn't try to get you as a conspirator, because this is taking place on your property?
Mm-hmm. So I didn't live there anymore. I had been living in Savannah way prior to when this happened.
Okay.
So
the guy the reporter who sat in on it, mm-hmm. basically was like, hey, they haven't rounded up everybody. This might be bigger than these 4 individuals, but your life is in danger.
Yep.
You need to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yes.
What did you do? Where did you go to? Because you said earlier, you really didn't have that close connection with family members. Mm-hmm. I mean, who can you run to and who can you trust? Because the way I look at this shit is done up under the military. Mm-hmm. Even though they're watching them, they don't have enough evidence to infiltrate, but it's still on their watch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Who mm-hmm. can you really trust at this point?
I honestly didn't feel like I could trust anybody. At that time, I gone back to his command asking for help, because one thing that they did was, as soon as he was arrested, there is different identifiers when it comes to pay. So my ex-husband at the time was paying child support. So I was going to school full time. So I was getting the GI Bill, and I was bartending part time, and I was in the reserves, which is only $250 a month, which is nothing. Instead of marking him as incarcerated or whatever, locked up in jail where he would still continue to get pay, his commander marked him as AWOL, which immediately stops your pay, and they never restarted it. And so this happened right before Christmas of 2011. So I had no finances other than what I was doing as far as school, which was only a little over $1,000. So we had a mortgage, we had a truck payment, like all the things. And so I went to his command, tried to get them to reverse the identifier so at least he could get his child support sent to me so I could support my child. And they never reversed it. So then I ended up finding a chaplain who was the only one in the military that actually helped me. He got in touch with Red Cross, told them what was going on. Red Cross sent me like $450 and they were like, get out of Georgia. And I'm like, well, that's not going to get me very far. Mm-hmm. So I then contacted my ex-in-laws and I was like, I need to at least get my son to safety because we're not safe. We're not okay. And so I took him up to Tennessee when he was 3 to be with them. So at least he was safe and he had a roof over his head and he would be fed. And so from then I was trying to figure it out. I stayed in Georgia for a little bit longer, trying to figure out where I was going to go. Cause like you said, I didn't have a support system and my family was very confused by all of this. I mean, I don't expect people to understand the gravity of the situation, but like, just show some empathy or something. But I finally talked to my mom and my mom was like, well, you can come up here for a bit. And so I went up there and she had since remarried and I ended up getting a job with Verizon and I was in the middle of figuring out paycheck. Like it was, I was trying to get into my own apartment. I was trying to reestablish, but it was kind of that interim of like hiring and waiting for the money to come in. And my mom is remarried and my stepdad, the new stepdad, was not okay with having another person in the home. So I ended up getting kicked out of the house before I had a place to live. So I ended up figuring it out, as I always do. And I eventually got into the apartment. So I contacted the apartment and so like asked if I could get in a little bit earlier. And so I was able to get into an apartment and I started working for Verizon. And then a year and a half later, I had enough money where I had health insurance. I had enough money where I could support my son. And I moved to Ohio to start over. Because I knew nobody there. I knew it was far enough disconnected where if there was anybody still like looking for me from this situation with my ex-husband, that it wasn't my home of record. Because all of that it's documented in the military. So like they knew my old home of address and all of that. So Ohio was like close enough to home if I needed to go somewhere. And then it was far enough away where like people couldn't find me. So for years, I hid under the radar. Like from 2013 to about 2016, there was like almost no like social media footprint of me. Like people were trying to find me and they couldn't find me because like they ended up arresting like 16 more people that were involved.
Wow. How long was this investigation that they wound up getting 16 more people? So how long did this investigation keep going on from the moment that your husband got arrested?
Almost 3 years.
So they still doing an ongoing investigation. So that means that the people, the one guy who allegedly told, why didn't he tell about the rest of the people? I'm
not sure. I don't know. Because the other people weren't actively involved in the murder itself. They were actively involved in the plans to do the other parts.
Okay, so, the assassinations and killing the political figures and all that. So basically, they couldn't really arrest them yet because there's nothing wrong with putting your thoughts and things down on a piece of paper. So they had to basically find a way to go after them in a different way.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you go to Ohio, and I know we've been talking, but this is crazy. So we're gonna keep going. You go to Ohio to get off the radar because you was told to go there, but unfortunately, Faith has an ugly way of showing his face again, and you get into a relationship, and all of a sudden, you're fighting for your son, and lo and behold, your ex pops back up into the picture with your son. Tell a little bit about that.
So I moved to Ohio. It would have been January of 2014. I ended up meeting my last relationship. It was in the fall of 2018. And he seemed great, just like everybody does in the beginning. I met him at a gym. At that time, I was starting to get into fitness. As far as like I was doing CrossFit very competitively at that time, and I needed a new gym to be able to train at because the one that I was training at wouldn't let me do my specific programming. So I went to a local gym that had a CrossFit area, and he happened to manage that gym. And he was very charismatic. He was very handsome, and he toured me around. And then he was like, "We should go out." So we started like going on dinner dates, and there was, he was just so excited to see me all the time. And it was like, I was cautious at first, and then it was like, a few weeks in, I was like, well, this does feel nice because like I've been alone. I went through what I did with my ex-husband, but then it started getting weird, like love bombing. Because I was like, I remember one night I was sitting in his car, and I was like, this is too good to be true. I'm like, you're too excited and too eager to like see me and the things that you say and all these things. And I was like, do you got like a girlfriend or a wife or something that you're not telling me about? Because at that time he had made it seem like he was completely available. And he's like, well, actually, I'm going through a divorce. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to fault you for that because I've been there. But I was like, I wish you would have been forthcoming about that. And he's like, well, we live together and it's very, very stressful and it's really wearing on me. And I was like, I'm stupid. I'm like naive, right? And I was like, well, you're always at my house. So why don't you just stay with me until the divorce is final and then you can figure it out. That way you're not like in the stress all the time because I know how much that sucks. And he's like, okay, no problem. So he moves in. And that was the beginning of the unraveling. And I mean, that was within a couple of months. I was financially abused. He refused to sign any type of legal lease or agreement because daddy was an attorney. So he knew in the state of Ohio, if you sign any kind of lease agreement, if you don't pay, you could be evicted. But in the state of Ohio, if you don't sign any kind of lease agreement, but you have mail going to a residence, it's your residence and you can't be evicted. So I didn't know that at the time. And so I started pushing back because he was getting like, he wouldn't pay for anything. And then I ended up finding out that he was cheating on me with a girl that he worked with at the gym, which I found out later that he cheated on his ex-wife with this girl.
How'd you find all this out?
This was within the first 6 months. And
you contacted his wife or the girl? Like, how did you guys all find out that this guy was basically entertaining all three of you guys?
So the wife, that's why they were going through the divorce, because the wife found out about all of that. And he made the girl that he was cheating on both of us with feel like it was her fault, that it was like she was the problem. So she was avoiding talking to either of us because he made her feel bad about it. And then he ended up pushing his ex-wife to commit suicide because, yes. So this goes back to
that? How do you know that?
Because she wrote him a note, and she was a pharmacist. He was the house husband because he refused to work like hard enough to provide for the household. So when they were going through the divorce, he was going after her for everything, like alimony, everything, because she was the breadwinner. And she kept begging him to stop. Like she's like, and I would hear these phone calls. Mm-hmm. And she would beg him not to keep doing this. And she ended up she was working for Walgreens at the time and then got a job offer at Walmart as a pharmacist and before the divorce was final. And then partially through that time frame, right before the divorce was final, she ended up losing her job. And she kept on trying to negotiate the alimony and he wouldn't. And then the final straw was they had 2 dogs, they didn't have children. And her dogs were like her life. And she was like, "You've taken everything from me." She's like, "Just don't take my dogs." And he took them. And so she felt like she didn't have a reason to go on. And so she purposely OD'd on insulin and they found her in her condo. And
how did you find out that she died?
Her mom called him.
And what went through your mind?
I was horrified because I knew what he was doing to me at that time. And at first, when the conversations were happening, before I really started to notice the abuse on myself, I used to think like she was crazy because he painted her out to be crazy, right? Like all these things. But then all these red flags started popping up because I would hear these conversations and like she was actually being a very like understanding human and was just begging for mercy, really. And then I was in the same situation because when I started finding out that he was cheating on me, like I was begging him for mercy. And I mean, he would threaten suicide. Like there was one point where we were driving down the road and this was right after I found out that he was cheating on me because he got caught because he lied to me and he told me he was going to a friend's house, like an old friend, to give him advice. And he didn't realize how many people know me in the area in Toledo. And he went to a pool hall and one of my friends that I used to do CrossFit with happened to be there. And the girl that he was cheating on me with looked very similar to me. And so she went to approach the girl thinking it was me because she knew that I was with this guy. And she got close enough and she realized it wasn't. And so she messaged me and she's like, "Hey, I have some really bad news to tell you." And then she sent me pictures. So that's how I found out. And he tried to deny it, of course. But
he was showing based on, and I'm not trying to throw you up under the bus. I don't want the listeners trying to throw you up under the bus. But based on the fact that here's your ex that's in prison for trying to kill you for insurance and trying to kill the presidents and political figures, and here come 16 other people 3 years later.
Yeah.
And you seeing this dude and you said you seeing things that he's doing, but let's go here for a minute. I know you love your son.
Yeah.
Why didn't you walk away from this shit?
So I tried.
Sooner is what I mean.
So that's a good question. So I tried to figure out a way legally to get him out of my home because the problem at that time was I owned that home. I was in a mortgage on my own and I couldn't just sell, right? So, and he wouldn't leave.
Why
so
not call the police and get a restraining order and put him out?
I tried to do that and the police wouldn't do anything.
But he was still married, correct?
At the beginning, yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to put my...
I know, it doesn't make any sense. So, because I can't remember like the timeline. I think she committed suicide, I want to say, was it in September of 2019? But at that point, so I was living, I had bought a house in 2016. And when he moved in and all of this started getting crazy, I did start to try to find an exit plan. So obviously I couldn't sell my house quickly, but I knew that I had to get out of that house to try to get away from him. So I ended up selling that house and buying a new one in 2021. And I tried to get rid of him then, but he went with me because I couldn't get rid of him.
Okay, now hold down a minute. You sell the house.
Yeah.
And he came with you into the new house. Not saying that it just doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And that's where like I kind of touched on this with you the last night, is there was certain things that I would do just out of survival that I wouldn't stand up for myself. And he had told me that if I let him go to the new house, that he would help pay. So he told me that he would help support the situation. And I was like, okay, but you're going to have to pay half of the mortgage. And when he moved in, he didn't pay again. And when I would try to kick him out, he would say, I don't have any place to go. I don't know what to do. He wouldn't go look for apartments. Like, I even started looking for apartments for him and he wouldn't go. And so we went like 2.5 years of where it was literally like, I would
You stayed in that shit for 2.5 years?
Because I couldn't get him to go. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. This is a judge-free zone, and people do crazy things and crazy situations, so we're not here to judge, but 2 more years. How long was he in your house before you sold the house?
He was in that old house for a little over a year.
So you basically are cohabitating, almost married in the state of Ohio, because, now you're going into 3 years with this guy. When does it finally go away, and how does your ex-husband come back into this? Because now your past is getting ready to catch up with you.
Yeah. So in 2023, I really started to pull away because I saw an opportunity. So years prior to this, I've been in counseling, and my counseling went from like PTSD rehabilitation to an exit plan. So this man was very dangerous. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't get out sooner, because the threat of violence was very real. He knew my background and he was using that as part of that like control mechanism to keep me stuck. But anyway,
he knew your background. What do you mean by that?
So he used to threaten to take everything from me. He would threaten me with guns. He threatened to commit suicide. He would pull guns and hold them to his head. Like one time he was driving down the road. I was in the passenger seat and I had found out that he was cheating on me. And he's like, if you say her name one more time, I'm going to blow my head off. And I said her name, and he pulled the gun out and he held it to his head while he was driving down the road. So then I panicked and I went to grab the gun, and I accidentally hit him on like the corner of his eye. So he said, and this is one of the reasons I didn't call the police, is he's like, you hit me. He's like, call the police. I dare you, because I have a mark and you don't. And he would do that kind of stuff to me all the time. He strangled me. Like it was scary. So it was like kind of just, I was just in survival mode, and it's stupid. And I agree. Like I should have figured out a way to get out, but I was so broken. Like I hadn't fully healed with what happened with my ex-husband. And then to be thrown into a situation that I felt like I was reliving all of that. I didn't know what to do, honestly. And, I am ashamed of that period in my life, but it happened and now we're here. But so in 2023, his mom passed away on Good Friday, and then his father passed away in October. And at that point, I had already been pulling away. Like we were like not speaking. I was trying to stay as far away from him as possible. I didn't care what he was doing. I wanted him out of the picture. Mind you, he wasn't involved with my son at all. He didn't want kids. And so it was just my son and I. Like I was still raising him, and we were like, my son and I would go do things together, but my ex wouldn't do anything with us. And then it was like towards like June, July of 2023, my ex started taking my son, where he would take him like rock wall climbing or out to dinner and not bring him home until late.
You're talking about the guy
the boyfriend. Yeah.
The boyfriend. Okay.
Yeah. So he started to slowly pull my child from me, and I was seeing this happen. And then in October, we found his father. He had passed away. And at that point, I was like, get out. Like, you have a house. They gave you the house. Get out. So he did. But then what happened in October was then he literally isolated my son from me. He started taking my son even more. Neighbors noticed that he was parking around the corner and like watching us. And then neighbors also noticed that the entire time that we lived at this new house, my ex was never seen with my son. And then all of a sudden my ex is like walking my dogs with my son and all of this. And the kids, so there was a couple of kids on our street that were the same age or near the same age as my son. He was in high school at the time. Mm-hmm. They started noticing my son was acting different. Like my son went from being a very kind child, a very fun child, to he started getting angry, and he started like he was priding himself on intimidating other kids, which is not the child that I raised. And they saw this like darkness in him. And so in October, I finally got rid of my ex, but he kept coming back. And then November is when so I competed in October in Virginia. And while I was gone, I ran into an old friend of both of ours that knew something was wrong because I was super traumatized. And so he was checking on me.
A friend of whose? That both of you guys knew, your ex?
Yeah.
And you?
Yep, through powerlifting.
Who had your son as you going on a powerlifting thing? Who's watching your kid?
So family, or I had a babysitter. My neighbors would watch him. It just depended on like what the situation was. Okay. So I get back and I was going up to a gym in Novi, and my ex went through my iPad and saw a conversation that said I was talking to this other guy that said, I'm completely done with this relationship. I need to get out. I don't feel safe and all these things. And so he called, my ex calls me and he's like, you need to get back here. And I was like, what? And he's like, oh, I saw that you're talking to another guy. I'm like, it's none of your business. Like, we're not together. And he was lying because he was pretending like he heard it from somebody else. And I was like, why did you go through my iPad? Because he was saying things word for word. So I drive back from Novi and he's at my house waiting for me. And he got very threatening when I walked in, and I ended up telling him to leave. So he took my son that day, which I knew they were supposed to go to some like rock wall climbing seminar that evening. So I was like, that's fine. Like, take him. And I went to like this women's healing class about like healing at home. And I called one of my friends and I told her, I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to change the locks on my house. And I'm just letting you know in case something happens. So I went to go change the locks, and he ended up waiting for me at my house with my son inside. So I called the police and I said, this man cannot be in my house. I don't feel safe. There's a room full of weapons because he used to collect weapons and he used to make ammunition. And I was like, he's already strangled me. He's threatened me with weapons. I'm afraid that he's going to harm me. And the police were like, well, you can't change your locks because he technically lives there. And so they showed up. My friend was there witnessing all of this, right?
Okay,
so
but
the police go in, they talk to them.
Not to cut you off, I'm trying to keep the viewers on point here. Mm-hmm. You was afraid of this guy when you come back from the powerlifting meet in Novi. Mm-hmm. But you let him take your son to a rock climbing event. I don't understand. Help me understand how you would do that. If you are conversing with somebody on your iPad saying that you're afraid, but you come back and you let him take your kid. I don't understand the connection. Or did just say maybe you wasn't mentally there at that particular point in time?
I wasn't mentally there at that time. I'm not going to lie. I don't have an excuse or a true understanding of what was going through my head at that time. I know that I was trying to keep the peace with my son.
Right.
Because I was noticing the divide that was becoming like.
How old was your son at this particular point now?
He's 15.
It's 15 now. So I get it. So, you can't change the locks, but you said he already moved in with his deceased parents' house.
Right.
So why wouldn't they he doesn't live there?
Because technically he still had mail coming to my house. He hadn't changed his address yet. So that was the loophole.
Hold that thought. We're going to come back with the conclusion of this story on the next episode of the show. And let me first say, you know, I really want to thank you for taking time to come and share a story, because you did say you really wanted to get this off your chest and help other people. I see your journey, I see your vision, but we definitely gonna have you come back and give us the conclusion of this. I'm gonna call it the Landri Chronicles. So hopefully we have you come back. We will have you come back, and we're gonna do a conclusion on this on part 2. So I want the viewers to make sure that you listen for the next episode of the Landri Chronicles, one woman's journey into taking back her strength and her power on the Andre the Beast Queen show. Landri, thank you so much for taking time to come on the first part of this episode. Then we're going to have you come back on part 2. Is that okay?
Thanks for having me.
You guys, make sure you subscribe, like, share, follow, click that button. All it takes is one click to make a difference in your life or change somebody else's. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Landri Chronicles on the Andre the Beast Creighton show.